You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Canton Symeou Show, our weekly crossover show where myself, Harry Symeou, and the brilliant Tom Canton of the Gooner Talk TV and the Arsenal Way, we get together and we have a chat about all things Arsenal. We share the show across our two YouTube channels, but it is available to download in audio format, both on the Gooner Talk and on the Chronicles of a Gooner. So stay tuned. We'll get that uploaded as soon as possible. But a big hello, first of all, to those of you joining us in the live chat. Hope you are all well. Hope you're all good. Hope you're not too cold, because I'm finding this weather's turned dramatically recently and I'm having to take a bigger coat to work, which is not ideal. Tom, do you get this sometimes? And I know this is weird and a random thing to discuss at the start of the show.
I love random conversations.
But do you find sometimes you put these massive coats on because you're freezing walking into the station, and then you're on the train sweating your ass off?
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. I mean, I used to, when I was teaching, and obviously you'd have like different blocks on the site. I'd put my coat on to go from one room to another that happened to be on the other side. And when you try and get from one lesson to another and you got like seconds to get there, and because you got to set everything up for your lesson, it was a case of like coat on everything on in December, run over, and by the time you get there, you're sweating buckets. Like, sir, why are you sweating so much? Like, so it's worse when you've got like 30 kids critiquing you as beads of sweat run down your face. So yeah, that's arguably worse, I'd say.
Yeah, fair point. I just never find that right balance between hot and cold.
No.
But there you go. It is what it is. Tom, we got lots and lots to get into this week. Arsenal have a big game at Anfield this coming Saturday, 5:30 p.m. kickoff at Anfield. Not been a happy hunting ground for us recently in the Premier League anyway. We'll discuss that. We'll dissect how we think that one might go. We'll also talk about the news that's just broken about an hour or so ago that Thomas Partey is available, which I think is massive for the Arsenal. We'll also touch on the recent reports regarding Alexandre Lacazette's future and the future of the Egyptian Pirlo, Mohamed Elneny. Let's kick off by talking about the Liverpool game, because I think that's what everybody's buzzing about going into the weekend. Thomas Partey being available for me makes the world of difference. How are you feeling going into this one? Because it's a fixture that in recent times we've struggled in. And now an opportunity, don't we? Maybe.
Yeah.
Was upset.
I was going to say, it's one of those games where you look at and you go, you just kind of mark it on your calendar and you're like, well, let's just write 3 points off there because we're not going to get them. But look, I think it's the most confident I've been going to Anfield probably since that 2012 game that we won 2-0 with Santi Cazorla and Lucas Podolski. Both scored first season, I think that was, without Robin van Persie. And yeah, Liverpool are a tough side, and they're a side that are going to cause a lot of problems. And from the way that we're hearing from Liverpool's injury news, Andrew Robertson might be fit again. Mane's going to be fit. Henderson still has a chance of making the game, despite all of the talk about their injury. So we can expect a Liverpool team that's going to be pretty much close to as full strength as it possibly can be still, despite all the talk of all the injuries they might have had. But it's just the way it goes with Arsenal, is that we face a team that we're told have loads of injuries, but, you know, they don't really. So they're all going to turn up on the day. Partey is massive, though. Like, if he is indeed fit, which there is a big hope that he's going to be, that changes a lot. I mean, going back to that 2012 game, that was the game where Abu Diaby had a brilliant game. And obviously shares a lot of similar characteristics with Partey, quite tall, really good progressing the ball with their feet. And that's going to be big for us, is if Partey can dominate the midfield and transition the ball for us from one end of the pitch to the other and get at Liverpool and unlock our wide channels, that's going to be crucial. But the biggest thing for Liverpool this season is that I think in just one of their 11 games, if they failed to score at least 2 goals, Brighton and we say Brighton and West Ham got results against them, but between them they scored 5 goals in those 2 games. If you want to get anything from Liverpool, you've got to score, and that's been our biggest issue. Is our defence looks good, but we haven't really been able to score. I think in 7 of the 10 unbeaten, we've scored 2 or less. So we really need to, screw it on and get our chances and take them when they come if we've got any hope of getting anything from Anfield.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I was just literally traveling home and the Thomas Partey news came up on my Twitter feed, which I'm obviously delighted about. I think you're right. I think it makes a massive difference to our chances. I think I was very fearful of going there with Maitland-Niles and Lokonga in the middle of the park. I think that, against Liverpool's midfield, that's not ideal. There is a tiny part of me, Tom, though, and I don't mean to kind of piss on the parade, if you like, but there is a tiny part of me that worries when Thomas Partey is a massive doubt and then is all of a sudden fit, because we saw on numerous occasions last season that Arsenal, almost out of desperation, would rush him back into the side. And we all saw how that went. We saw him then break down again, and then we then had to contend without him for another period of time. Is there a small part of you that is fearful about Thomas Partey's ongoing injury problems?
Absolutely. I think it'd be naive if you weren't worried. You remember that famous Spurs game where he got pushed back onto the pitch by Mikel Arteta? Like, those games are a real concern because he's such a crucial player. And I mean, we lost Partey for the start of last season and we were 16th, I think, by Boxing Day. And his absence was a massive, massive part of us being that poor. So him being there and available, I thought Maitland-Niles was really good against Watford. Like, don't take anything away from his performance, but Partey is a considerable step up on Maitland-Niles. And I mean, for you, like Partey, do you think Partey is kind of the difference between an Arsenal that can compete for top 4 and one that can't? Is it that simple to point to one player as influence on the team?
Yeah, I think it is. But I think that's 50% because of how good Thomas Partey is and 50% because we don't have an alternative. So I think, we talk a lot about how successful the summer transfer window was. And I think overall it was. But the one black mark on it for me was the failure to address that midfield position. I know nobody could have foreseen Granit Xhaka picking up an injury that would rule him out for such a long period of time, especially given that his fitness record has been, spotless. But, there's a couple of things for me. So first of all, we don't have another Thomas Partey. And I know it's not easy to just pluck out players of that quality, but someone who does what he does. I think that Lokonga's slightly different in his profile. I think that Elneny is much more limited. I don't think Ainsley Maitland-Niles is a similar profile to him. I worry with Granit Xhaka, even if he was fit now, that he wouldn't be able to press the way that Arsenal are pressing at the moment. And so I don't know if that fit, is something that we can look at. But yeah, to answer your original question, I think he is that important half because of how good he is, but half because of the lack of alternatives. And I think that could be the big mistake or the big miss that Mikel Arteta and Edu made in the summer that might come to bite us later on in the season. And I've always got that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, it was. Whilst I'm a big fan of Edu, and I think he did an amazing job with the players that we brought in, but it is that midfield position you look at and go, that at the start of the window, that for me was the big one, and we didn't do that. And if we miss out on top 4 this season, and we got a real opportunity to get that because we didn't bring in that midfielder, it's going to be a big kind of mark on Edu when I don't want there to be, because I think he's got some really good ideas, and I think he's helping to build a squad that's progressive, and it's getting us back to where we want to be and in the conversation again amongst some of the biggest sides in the league. So I don't want there to be these big criticisms of him, but rightly that we can point the finger at that midfield position if we don't benefit from not having someone there. You look towards January, and I know we're going to come on to some transfer news, but do you think that there's scope for Arsenal to bring in a midfielder that would be, would be our next best or as good as Partey in that January window? Is that feasible? And do you think that Arsenal would even likely do something like that?
I feel like in keeping Granit Xhaka, in making that decision, they kick the can down the road with regards to bringing in a starting midfield player. And I don't know if circumstances or if they will look at Thomas Partey and say, well, he's broken down a couple of times again already. Is it something that we need to do and we need to kind of speed up that timeline? Remember, January is notoriously a difficult month to do business in as well. I always think, and I know people say that, and sometimes people say a lot of things in football and they use cliches and they use, kind of generalisms, but I really do think that is one. There is a problem trying to purchase players in January because of the difficulties that the selling club might have in them replacing that player. I mean, I think we can talk about it, and I think it's something that I think the club at least need to consider. But I mean, a question back to you: who do you think would be realistic? Who's a realistic target that you could go and bring in and say, this is a signing not just as a panic signing, one that we're going to benefit from in the long term, but one that's achievable in this particular month?
It's tough, isn't it? Because there's so few players in January that tend to move. You look at maybe someone like Frank Kessie, as you talk about, who's got 6 months left on his deal at Milan, and you think if Arsenal throw in, say, a 25, 30 million pound bid and offer the wages that he's after, would that get him? And I mean, is 25 to 30 million pounds a good deal for Arsenal for a player that's just got 6 months left that you could poach on a free? It might be if it beats the competition. And who's going to care about spending £25 million on a player if he's absolutely bossing it for us for the next 3, 4, 5, however many years? So I do look at someone like Kessie, and people talk about and say, oh, well, we don't want to sign someone that's too similar to Partey. I'm like, why not? Like, Partey's great. Like, I love Partey. And I think that you can have two Parteys if you like. And I think it's a lazy comparison anyway, but I think that there's nothing wrong with having two players as good as Thomas Partey in the middle of the central midfield for Arsenal. So I'd look at him. Obviously, there's the Yves Bissouma stuff that we always talk about. And I'm not going to go into the social side of what's going on with him at the moment, but like there's other players out there that we've been linked to previously. Bruno Guimaraes at Lyon, another player that's really, really positive. You've got obviously Dennis Zakaria at Borussia Mönchengladbach, who's got 6 months left on his deal. Could he be someone we could look at to bring in? I really liked Enoch Nwepo, who Brighton brought in from Red Bull Salzburg. I like him a lot. I know I'm biased with my Salzburg kind of side of things, but Salzburg themselves got a young guy called Camara there who's also showing like he could be kind of that next player coming through. So there are players that are around. People talk about Renato Sanchez. I wouldn't dare go close to Renato Sanchez with his injury record. I was going through, I think it was the other day, looking through how many games he's missed, and he's missed 71 matches since 2017. And he's only 24 and he's missed 71 games, which is incredible. And they're all, and I think it's obviously most people will follow Dr. Rajpal Brar on Twitter, who's like the Arsenal fan physiotherapist and you go to for all that. And someone asked him about whether he'd take Renato Sanchez, and he was like, absolutely no chance. The intensity of the Premier League in combination with the types of injuries that he's had would just be a disaster for him. Yeah. So yeah, in short, there are options out there. Do I think Arsenal are going to really go for it? I genuinely don't know, because they do surprise me with some of the things that he's done. So we could do. And I think if they spot that there's a chance for us to get top four, I can actually see them doubling down and pushing for it.
Yeah, all great points. I mean, you mentioned some options there. I agree with you on the Renato Sanchez thing. I think every time he seems to have a good game anywhere, whether it's on international duty or whatever, we get those clips coming up on Twitter again, people retweeting it. Why wouldn't you want this guy? But a massive part of being a good player and a key player is being reliable in terms of your fitness. And I know that's not always in the player's hands. Sometimes there are other issues. There are, tackles that lead to injuries that don't necessarily reflect on the way that player takes care of himself. But that can be, it can have such a detrimental effect on a side, and you can't be relying on players, and the thing is with Partey as well, right? Well, the point that we have to stress is that he didn't have a bad injury record prior to coming to the club. So we can't sit there and point the finger at the club and say, well, you didn't do your due diligence on Thomas Partey and his fitness issues, because they didn't exist before. But you could say that if we went and signed Renato Sanchez and he came in and had these problems time and time again. You could say that if we looked at someone like even Calvin Phillips, people are talking about Calvin Phillips in the chat. He's another one who I don't rate at that level anyway, but that's another debate for another day. But he breaks down quite frequently as well. So, you need to take this into consideration, and you need to think about it and use the previous as much as you can. But as we've seen with Partey, it's not always a guarantee that means when they come to your team and your league and your style, that they're going to not have those issues. A couple of other things on the Liverpool game. There's a few decisions that Mikel has to make. I think the left back one is a big one. Kieran Tierney returns to fitness. Nuno Tavares has done brilliantly up until now. What would you do, Tom, if you were Mikel Arteta? Would you bring Tierney straight back in Or would you feel and look at what Tavares has done and say, you deserve to stay in the team?
For me, and it sounds really silly to say this, but there's two options, and I don't mean one or the other. I mean, one option is you go three at the back and you play Tierney left centre back and you put Tavares left wing back and you double up on Mo Salah. That's kind of the one of the big kind of left field options. It's not even left field. I think it's quite sensible actually when you think about it. I mean, we went to Anfield in '89 and played a back three surprisingly, and it paid off very well. So if you're going to compare the impact of that on the likes of John Barnes, why not think about the impact of what it can do on someone like Mo Salah and suffocate the space available for someone like him with Tavares and Tierney, who has played very well in that spot for Scotland as well. So it's not to say that he can, and for us, of course. The other option for me is to play Tavares in the back four. Sorry, I just think that he's a player obviously in form. He's a player doing fantastically well. Kept clean sheets again for the Portuguese youth side. I know they're only playing in the youth system, but still, it's important to maintain consistency in his performances, and he did that. I think that his physicality is something that Tierney obviously lacks. He's taller, he's more broad, he can muscle players off the ball. I think that could be really good against someone like Salah. Tierney has played against Salah, so he's got that experience, but it's not necessarily stopped Salah from still really, ruining him at times. So I would stick with Tavares, go with the physicality. If we are to play a back four, which both Brighton and West Ham did when they got points against them, and we probably need to if we want to score a couple of goals. And as I said earlier, if you want to get something from Liverpool, you have to score because they're going to score. So yeah, Tavares for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. And I know that people will always push back on that and say, well, Kieran Tierney's a more accomplished defender. And with Mo Salah on that side, that's something that we need to be wary of. I just think that his ability to get forward more powerfully than Kieran Tierney, if that makes sense, in terms of the way he can just pick up the ball and drive past players. I know Tierney's good at getting into those positions, and you could probably argue has a better delivery when he gets into those positions. But Tavares' unpredictability just feels like a really big weapon that we could potentially use. You think about the way Liverpool play and Trent Alexander-Arnold's willingness to get forward and the gaps that he might leave. I just feel like Tavares in the form that he's in would potentially cause Liverpool some more problems. So I would stay with him. Plus, I'm a big believer that if you get an opportunity and you take that opportunity and you haven't put a foot wrong, unless there is a massive difference in the quality of the two players, then you shouldn't be changing them just because he's Kieran Tierney and he's Nuno Tavares. So I think for me, I think it sends a message if Mikel Arteta stays with the team that served him so well in recent weeks. And I'd like to see him stick with him. Look, if Tavares makes a mistake, I promise I'm not going to sit on the post-match podcast and slag Arteta off, because I don't think, you can argue with the idea of Tavares deserving to continue in the side. I think he's been that good, that impressive. One of the things I was speaking about yesterday and speaking about today on the 90 Min show was, I'm really interested, Tom, to see how Arsenal are going to start this game. Yeah. Because traditionally we've gone to Anfield, we've started slow. We know that Liverpool traditionally start fast. They've pinned us back, they've scored an early goal, and the game has essentially been over. I wonder if this new confident Arsenal side is going to go to Anfield and say, hold on a minute, we're not going to sink deep and we're not going to let you, just come on to us and defeat us essentially in the first 10, 15 minutes. We're going to be a bit more aggressive because we've started games fast in recent months, and push up to the halfway line and say, no, we're here to play. Is that being too brave? Is that being too bold? What's your take on it? How would you approach the first 15, 20 minutes? Because I think that's going to be key.
Yeah, it is. I think we do need to attack them because I think they're vulnerable. I think they've showed that this season that they can concede. They're not the Liverpool that won the league with Van Dijk. It's a different Liverpool. It's Liverpool that people have had time now to work out their kind of the little chinks in the armor sort of thing. So they can be got at, as teams have showed this year. I think that you look at the kind of the blueprint of the game against Leicester, for instance, where we were playing obviously at the King Power Stadium, a stadium in which we were expected to be under a lot of pressure from the off. And we really turned the screw on Leicester from the first minute and used the wide areas in particular to really kind of double up with Tomiyasu supporting Saka and, of course, Tavares supporting Smith Rowe on the other side. And it is going to be that overload in the wide areas that Arsenal will need to be both wary of getting caught on the counter, but also making sure that you're creating solid chances. And Smith Rowe is going to be huge in this game. He's been a lot more direct playing on the left, gets into the box a lot more, and obviously Saka delivering on the right-hand side is going to be crucial. But when it comes to the strikers, which we expect to be probably Aubameyang, I'm not sure who starts at 10, whether or not you go with, say, Ødegaard for his service, because we're not going to be... Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because you don't know whether or not, if you're going to play more offensive, starting with Lacazette suits that more than it does Ødegaard. But if you're going to be a little bit more reserved, if you throw in Ødegaard, it gives you an out ball, and it gives the opportunity to, say, plaster balls on him on the edge of the, I suppose, the centre circle, and he can turn, spin, and play it in behind for us. But it's a really tough one as to... I'm glad I'm not making that choice. So I will firmly sit on the fence with those two, because I don't know who I would pick if I was Mikel Arteta, because I think there's benefits to both players in such a tactically difficult game to judge. But I do think we need to go for it, and I think we need to be on them, and I think we need to shock them, to be honest. I think I don't want to be an Arsenal side that's just expected to kind of go there and, just bow down to Liverpool. I want to be a side that goes there and tries to get something, shocks them a bit, and, ruffles their feathers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we're getting quite a bit of heat in the chat box about the Tavares and Tierney thing. Yeah. So what I've done is I've stuck a poll in the YouTube comment section, which you guys can vote on. We've had 22 votes in the minute or so that it's been up there, 24 now. I want to know from you guys who you would like to see start at left back on Saturday, and towards the end of the show, we'll reveal those results. So get voting on that one. I didn't know you could do this in-play polls until a few days ago. It's a great thing.
Oh, you're definitely showing me how to do that after.
It's fantastic. I'll show you. It's no sweat. So we know that there's a big debate at left back. You've talked about the number 10 position. I agree with you. That's another contentious position. I was sitting there thinking today and talking about it today. And one of the things that came to my mind was the fact that the idea of maybe being without Thomas Partey, and we know that now, according to reports, he should be available. But the fact that he might not have been, I felt, might have pushed Mikel Arteta into dropping Lacazette and playing that extra midfielder to give us that little bit more stability, to almost compensate for the fact that the Ghanaian was potentially going to be unavailable. But I hope now that if he is available, that he's going to stick with the team and the system that's served us really, really well. Do you want to give a prediction? Can we do that? Is it... I'm always a bit wary about it.
Or scoreline, or both.
Scoreline.
I said, my head said 3-1 Liverpool. That's what my head was telling me. If I was going to say put any money on the game, if I was thinking from a neutral perspective and trying to take all the bias and all the confidence and the ego out of it, my head says 3-1 Liverpool. My heart says 2-2, which I know doesn't sound all that confident, to be honest, but I think that'd be a great result. I think I'd absolutely snap your arm off for 2-2, because it keeps us in the hunt for Liverpool. Like, if we lose this game, I think we go 5 points behind them. So, and I know we're not really meant to be looking at Liverpool as kind of the barometer for Arsenal, but I just feel like it's important not to lose this game for some reason, really key. And we talked about this last time, didn't we, Harry, about whether or not this game's a free hit for us.
Yeah.
And I see the argument on both sides about it being a free hit, because obviously Liverpool are going to beat a lot of sides at Anfield this season, and we're not meant to be in contention with them. But if we are going to get anything from the top four, they're another team going for the top four, because to be in for the title, you've got to be going for the top four. So, yeah, I will say a very, optimistic 2-2, but my head still thinks that Liverpool are going to take this, not comfortably, but, they'll probably be 2-1 up and then nick one in the last few moments to make it through and flatten them.
Yeah, I think if you're not, if you're a football man, it's impossible to make a stronger case for Arsenal to win this game than Liverpool. So absolutely. I think we have to take our Arsenal hats off and be fair about this. And I guess we'll see on Saturday. Let's go over to the live comments. Let's take a couple of your comments. Before I do that, just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the like button. It really, really does help the stream. Make sure you subscribe to both channels if you haven't done so already, right here on the Chronicles of a Gooner and the Gooner Talk, which is, of course, linked in the description. So make sure you've done that. That way you'll never miss one of these shows, because we rotate between the two each week. So get involved there. Also, we've currently got people watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch. We are on Twitch, Chronicles AFC. You can find us there. Really new to the Twitch space, and our Facebook page is not as active as it probably should be, but I can see there's a couple of you there. So hello. Let's go over to the chat box. John Daly says, Tom, have you found the pub to watch the match on Saturday? Have you got an issue with watching the game?
Basically, it's my birthday on Sunday. So my missus is taking me out in London tomorrow. And then I'm seeing a lot of my uni friends on Saturday from when I went to Nottingham. So I've got to find, I'm sneaking away for the game, basically. I've got to find a place in Shoreditch. So if anyone knows of any sports bars in Shoreditch, let me know, because that's where I'm going to be.
Easy. You'll easily find in Shoreditch.
Sure
Don't worry about it. Yeah. I'll tell you some places that I probably shouldn't say on a podcast. I know they'll be showing it for sure. But you'll have no problem there. And a happy birthday in advance.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Right. Let's see what some of you guys are saying before we move on to a couple more topics. Lots of people saying that Liverpool are going to win. 3-1 is quite a common prediction in the chat. Brad's gone with a 2-2. No, he says he will take a 2-2. I would take any sort of result at Anfield. I've got to be honest. Cavill's gone with a 1-1. Jordan Charles has got a spot for you. There you go. Old Street Sports Bar. And Terence Tibbs is near Shoreditch as well, so you might even bump into him. There you go. There you go. Right. Let's talk a little bit about Alexandre Lacazette, because he is a player whose contract is due to expire at the end of the season. A lot of talk around whether or not he will stay. I read something today that basically suggested that Arsenal are actually quite open to keeping hold of Lacazette as long as the terms
the Athletic, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. As long as they don't find themselves in a position where they're stuck with a big salary on a long-term contract, which feels a bit like stating the obvious, to be honest. Where are you on the Lacazette thing? Would you keep him? What sort of terms would you be willing to keep him under, I guess, is a better question.
I'll be shocked if he stays. I'll be if the club do end up agreeing a contract, I would be very surprised. I think one of the weaknesses of Arteta is that he wants to try and keep everybody happy, which I know seems a little bit contradictory when you think about Guendouzi and Özil and that. But members of the squad like Laka, who he genuinely values and likes, and as part of his group, I think he wants to try and please them all. That's why you've seen him say that he wants Nketiah to stay, and there's all this talk of Lacazette maybe getting a new contract. But I would be surprised if he did stay. I wouldn't, because if it was a choice between him for another year or Aubameyang for another year, I'd say Lacazette. But that's not the situation that we're in. Aubameyang's going to be here for another year. I don't see him going with a year left. I don't see anyone buying him with a year left or any kind of agreement happening. And I think that the club do kind of want to look at that striker position as the next step on the journey of Arteta's squads, and the next step to the next 5 or however many years that this squad's going to be together for. And there are strikers out there of kind of that mid-20s range that are, ready to take that step. You look at players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin at Everton that you could look at. Ollie Watkins maybe at Aston Villa from Premier League sort of options. You go abroad and you start looking at Yusuf Enesri at Sevilla. We've obviously been linked to the likes of Dusan Vlahovic, Alexander Isak at Real Sociedad. There are strikers out there that are ready to be plucked and are ripe for this kind of next step in their career. So I would be surprised if we didn't go for someone and let Alex Lacazette go. But it is Arsenal and they are unpredictable, so you never know. What do you think?
I'm very much of the school of thought that I don't mind Lacazette staying, because I feel like not only does he bring quite a bit on the pitch, he brings a lot off of it as well. I think he's clearly a big influence in the dressing room, clearly has a positive influence on those young players around him. I look at what we've got waiting in the wings. I know Eddie Nketiah is probably going to leave, but if you look at the current state, Nketiah, Balogun, are either of them ready to step up and take that position? I don't think so. Even if we do go and bring in another striker, we still need Lacazette in the squad. I just feel like we need a bit more depth. If we're looking to get into Europe next season again as well, then you will have games to offer these people. This is one of the big challenges of this season, has been that you've lost, in the Europa League, for example, 12, 13 guaranteed fixtures probably that you could have given to these fringe players that they're not going to get now. I don't think he will stay because I think at his age, he'll be looking for a more lucrative offer than one that Arsenal are probably going to give him. and that's absolutely fair enough on his part. I won't have any sort of issue with him deciding that. But I would only keep him, Tom, if we do go out and bring in someone else.
Okay.
It can't be let's keep Lacazette, which means in the summer we're going to avoid the striker issue. Because it feels like in this rebuild, we've started from the back. We've now got a pretty decent back line. We've got some depth to that back line as well. When you think about Saliba coming back as well, you're looking at him as potentially a third centre half and someone who can compete for those positions. So there's a bit of depth there. You move into the midfield. We've all talked about that being an area that needs addressing. Wingers, I think we're okay for now in that department. But forwards feels like the position, centre forwards, that Mikel Arteta has looked at and gone, well, this is not ideal. And you know it's not ideal by the fact that he's changed his system to accommodate both of them. He looks at Lacazette, he looks at Aubameyang, and he thinks, I need aspects of both of their games in this team. And that's why I believe he's picking them both. Not because I think this is his preferred formation, because I think he's recognized he needs elements of Aubameyang and he needs elements of Lacazette in the team to produce something in the final third. So I think it's not a situation he looks at and thinks is ideal, but it's one he's gone, well, there is enough quality here for me to make do and for me not to prioritize this area. But going forward, I think it will be an area of priority. You look at their contract situations, you look at their ages, and it is an area that we need to strengthen in. So I would be okay with him staying, but only if we go out and bring someone else in. Also, if he left, I wouldn't really have a major issue with that as well. He's been at Arsenal for a few years now. Like, this is the first time he looks like an indispensable member of the team, and I think that says quite a bit.
Yeah, look, I think that I get the argument about keeping him. One thing you said about Balogun, is he kind of ready? No, he's not. But if you keep Lacazette, is he ever going to be ready? Kind of thing. Yeah. Like, they got that case of next season if he's not going on loan, which
you've got to take a punt at some point, right? On
absolutely.
Young strikers.
Yeah, like he needs to loan this January. Like, Balogun has to go on loan because next year we're going to have European football. That's going to be a great opportunity to throw him into the first team and get him in and around that kind of group and playing if he's not going to go on loan again. So he has to go on loan this January. I don't see Nketiah leaving unless they get a silly bid kind of coming for a guy with 6 months left on his deal. I think Arteta's going to look at him and go, look, if Aubameyang or Lacazette get injured, we're going to be down to however many strikers and Balogun's on loan. So we're going to need to keep you for these 6 months and then we'll just let you go at the end of the contract. And, you know, it would have been nice to have you at the club for that amount of time, but kind of thanks to the memory sort of thing. So you look at the summer and you go, we're going to bring someone in. Balogun's here, Nketiah's gone, Aubameyang's here. We've brought someone in, whoever that may be, not naming any names. Is adding Lacazette to make it 4 and Balogun putting him too far down the roster to prevent him from getting valuable minutes? And I think it might be.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. Another player whose future is in doubt is Mohamed Elneny. And there have been reports today, Tom, that Arsenal are willing to terminate his contract in January and let him go. Now, initially, my thought was, well, we're so short in midfield. How can we allow this to happen? And then I thought about the fact that he probably will be someone that goes to the African Cup of Nations anyway. So where are you on the whole Elneny thing? Is it time to just kind of let him go and just let him build somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it is. If in January, the position that I think we're most likely to sign someone in is midfield. So him going to the African Cup of Nations means that that doesn't affect us as to our depth. He's always going to go there. And I think that we were going to need to bring someone in the short term anyway that could be a long-term option as well. So, yeah, it's a very short and easy answer for me. I appreciate everything he's done for the club. And I think that he came back off that loan from Besiktas and put in some really good performances. I will not forget the performance he put in at Old Trafford that gave us our first win there since 2006 alongside Thomas Partey. So he gave us some really good performances after kind of, having a little bit of a revival. But he was never of the quality that was going to be an Arsenal starter. He was always brought in as a depth player, always brought in to be a bit of a utility man and cover, and he's never eclipsed that. So yeah, give him those last few years of his career playing week in, week out somewhere that he's going to get those minutes. I think he's probably earned that.
Yeah, he's been heavily linked with moves to Turkey on numerous occasions, and this report, I think, originated from a Turkish outlet if I'm not mistaken. So that kind of makes sense as well, doesn't it? But it is being reported widely now that Edu is happy and Arteta is happy to almost tear up the remainder of his contract and say, if you find the club in January, off you go. Another player, Tom, that we're being heavily linked with at the moment, who could be on his way out of Manchester City, is Raheem Sterling. This is a weird one for me, right? Because talent-wise, he's brilliant. You know, he's fantastic. He's played in great teams. He went to the Euros when lots of people were questioning his inclusion in the side, and he dragged England through a few fixtures at that particular tournament. A player with lots to offer still. But is he a player that fits into Project Arteta? Because this is where I'm struggling with it. What's your take on Sterling? Would you like to see him come to Arsenal?
It's such an awkward kind of problem, isn't it? It's such an awkward problem to solve. And I chatted about this on my channel with a few of the members, and we talked about this in depth on our members podcast at the weekend. And all of us sat and agreed that we'd take him, no questions asked, that you'd have to be silly not to take Sterling. And then I did the press box show on the Arsenal Way of Chris Wheatley and Kai Karnak, and both of them turned around and said, no, they wouldn't have him. And they put really good reasons as to why they wouldn't have him. And then I was like, I'm really stuck with this because I get both sides to the argument on this one. The argument that he's not good enough is a joke, quite frankly. Like, if you think that Sterling's not of a quality level to be in the Arsenal team, I don't know what you'd need to convince you. I don't know. And that there's a level of entitlement, I feel, maybe to say no to Sterling. If your reasoning behind not wanting Sterling is because of the existing personnel in the team, then I can have a conversation with you, because I think there's more to talk about there. The argument to bring him in, you'd say, is it's probably more costing to Martin Ødegaard than it is to Emil Smith-Rowe. Because I feel like if you bring in Sterling, Smith-Rowe takes Ødegaard's number 10 role, more so than Sterling takes Smith-Rowe's role on the left-hand side. I like Smith-Rowe a lot on the left, and I think it's helping him to develop as more of a direct goal-scoring attacking midfielder, as we're seeing. But I do think that Smith-Rowe's future will lie, as his shirt number describes, in the number 10 role. And I think he can become more of a goal-scoring number 10 and a creative force too. And there's nothing wrong with using him in this wide role at the moment. It's really working for him. But I think in the long term, we may see him flourish in this more central position, which is, we've seen with plenty of players. But you have players like Mason Mount, for instance, that can play across the attacking midfield three and flourish. Smith-Rowe, I feel, has got the ability to do the same thing. So if you bring Sterling in, you got a player that scores goals, that creates goals, that's got Premier League experience of playing at the top level, that's 26. It's a really good age. He's not like he's old or like you're investing in someone with no sell-on value. He'll have sell-on value in the next 3 years still, if you did ever sell him. And when we bought Aubameyang at 28 for £55 million. So buying someone at 26 is not the end of the world for sell-on value side of things, if that's your concern. And for the reported £50 million for a player at 26 of that level who's English, I think that's an amazing price for Raheem Sterling, to be honest. It's just about how you kind of fit him in. And in the chat box, Real Gooner, I can see there, Sterling not good enough for City, so why is he good enough for Arsenal? Is not an argument. City are so far and away above us right now. Their squad is ridiculous. They've just spent 100 million to replace Sterling and Jack Grealish on that left-hand side. They got Phil Foden who can play on that left-hand side. We don't have that kind of depth. And this level, I feel like sometimes we see this level of entitlement that people still put Arsenal on this pedestal that's on the same level of City or Chelsea or Liverpool. It's not right now. And I always go, does Sterling get in and play, or anyone that we sign, for those top four sides? Because that's where we want to be. Are they going to get into those squads? Are they going to get us closer to those squads? Signing Sterling into this Arsenal squad would close the gap for me. He would get into Liverpool's team. He would compete alongside Sadio Mane. He would get into Chelsea's team. He would compete alongside any of their left-hand side players. I think he's a player that, would add a lot to this Arsenal team. It's just a conundrum about how you kind of fit the jigsaw together.
Yeah, I think a few points on that from me. The first one is the age thing. Everybody assumes that Raheem Sterling is older than he is because he's been on the scene for such a long time. And you can often do that, can't you? You can often look at players and think, oh, I remember him from XYZ date. And now, as a result, I think he's over the hill. You can make a case that someone who started playing at the top level like Sterling did at such a young age will maybe have a decline earlier than someone who came up the ranks a little bit later because of burnout and all the other things that we associate with kind of modern footballers now. But the age shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be a problem. And I think Edu has made it clear that Arsenal will be looking to add senior quality as well to the side moving forward. It isn't just about the 21 to 23-year-olds, because you're not going to win anything immediately with all of those players, I don't think, anyway. I think you do need that blend. And he would bring a winning mentality, he would bring experience, and he'd bring a lot of quality to the team. The thing with the price is, I don't think the transfer fee would be astronomical and out of reach, but I think the wages would be a big problem. I think we'd end up in a situation where I know we've got a couple of players that are on pretty big money. We know that Aubameyang is on huge money. But I do think that bringing someone like Sterling in, you'd have to pay. Someone said in the chat 300k. I don't know if that's true.
I'm just checking it now.
Have a look. But I'd imagine that it would be significantly more than the players he'd be competing with in that position. And I think, look,
he's on 300k.
Yeah, 300k. There you go. I think in football, you're going to get situations where some players earn more than others. And that's just the way it is. Like in any job, right? You work in a corporate company, there will be people on bigger money than people right at the bottom of the food chain. That's just the way it works. But that I think that would be a potential off-put for me, the wage thing and what it would mean to the rest of the squad. Does he block the development of some other players? I think you've got to weigh that up against how much of an impact you think he'll have on the side in the short term, and then decide whether that upside is worth the downside. But I guess for me, the biggest thing that maybe is making some fans feel reluctant about the idea of going after Raheem Sterling is the fact that we've been burnt in the past when we've gone and signed players whose careers at better sides have hit a bit of a decline. You think about Willian, you think about when we brought Gallas in all those years ago, you think about Mikhail Sylvestre. I know we're not on the same level as City and you don't class them as a direct rival, and I completely agree with that. But you're looking at another Premier League side and you're looking at picking up someone that they believe is surplus to requirements. And in the past, we've done that and it's never worked out. And I think that people, perhaps in their kind of, mindset towards this, are not thinking about what Raheem Sterling is and what he would add to our team, but are perhaps thinking about the fact that we've been burnt by this before and that we could end up in a similar situation with a player on big money just isn't at the top of his game anymore. Do you think that that's playing a part in some of the negativity towards the idea?
Oh, absolutely. Arsenal fans in general, we suffer from PTSD. We do it all the time. Exactly. We've been burned so many times before. I'm not surprised that's a fair argument. If that's your argument as to why you don't want to sign him because you're sick and tired of Arsenal buying players from other teams of that echelon that are just not good enough for them, I understand where you're coming from. So I've got some sympathy. I think that it's slightly different. I mean, Willian was on a free, Louise was on 8 million quid, Cech was on a free, Gallas was in was it the swap deal with Ashley Cole those years ago?
Yeah.
So it's slightly different in the sense that you're bidding an actual figure to trying to get this guy in. He's not getting as many minutes, not because he's too old or because just because he's too old. Like Willian was at this point 32 when we signed him. David Luiz was of an age where he just wasn't playing every week. Cech was being replaced by Thibaut Courtois. Obviously we've signed like Danny Welbeck from Man United, but again, I don't look at that in the same kind of bracket as this. Sterling's not getting minutes because of Jack Grealish and Phil Foden, and I can't really look at those two and go, oh yeah, look, he can't even get in above these guys. Why are we not signing? Because they are unbelievable players. So I think it would be a little bit entitled to be like to say he's not good enough for Arsenal, because I think the big question is actually, would he even want to join Arsenal? I think that, and when you ask that kind of question, you're not talking about a player whether they're good enough for Arsenal. It's whether Arsenal are good enough for him right now. Is more of the question. So I would do it. I would go 50 million. I would pay the 300,000 pound per week wages, only with the caveat, and it does come with quite a big caveat, is if we had signed in that window the striker that we need and the central midfielder that we need. If we get those two key positions and Edu's thinking, oh, I'm sitting pretty here, let's go and chuck 50 million on Raheem Sterling. I'm like, look, you've done some great work, Edu. You can go and have fun. You can go have a spending spree if you like, because that I think would just, it would add that extra dimension to Arsenal's options in the front. And if you remember, and some people were raising the point in the chat box, so I'm not going to take credit for it, that Arteta got the best from Sterling when he worked at City. And that's a relationship that Sterling's always said he's given a lot of credit to Arteta for. So maybe at 26, he could do a really good job with him at Arsenal.
Yeah, that's probably playing a massive part in these links even being brought to the table in the first place, that close relationship. Tom, I just wanted to ask you, mate, are you getting this in your live chat box when you're doing shows as well? People trying to catch you out with fake player names so that you can...
Oh, yeah. I know that Terence does it, and that's why he's blocked. I just block him. It's just easier.
He's tried one here as if I'm going to fall for that, Terence. Come on, mate. Come on. Oh, God. Anyway,
highlighted it now. He's got what he wanted.
Yeah, I suppose so. Right. I think we're going to leave it there because we've discussed plenty, and I'm always wary of talking too much before games. I like to talk after the game when you've got the event to reflect on. Just looking at that poll, which we will share the results with you in a moment. But before we do that, there's nearly 300 of you watching, and we've only got 80 likes on the board. So we need to at least get that up to 100. There's no excuse whatsoever for us not to hit that target, because there are more than enough of you in the live chat box. So hit the like button if you haven't done so already. With regards to the poll about who should start at left back on Saturday, we said Tavares. A lot of people gave us heat for that in the comments, but it seems the majority of the live chat agree with us, because 62% of you want to see the Portuguese defender start at left back over Kieran Tierney this weekend. And I think that is a testament to how good this guy has been in recent weeks. So, big result there. Big win for Nuno Tavares. But will Mikel Arteta take the decision? That is the big question going into Saturday's game. Patrick says the poll is broken. I don't think it is, mate, but yeah,
no,
nice try.
You're just in the minority, I'm afraid. Which doesn't mean you're wrong, to be fair. Like, there's been a lot of things I've been in the minority of, and I still think I'm right. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Very
if
true.
you don't back yourself, who are you going to back? But there we go. Tom, just remind people quickly how they can find your channel, how they can find you on social media, how they can keep up to date with all the brilliant work that you do.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, you can find myself at the Gooner Talk TV on Twitter. Just type in the Gooner Talk on YouTube and it'll come up. You can find me chatting away about all the latest Arsenal news at 8 a.m. pretty much every day, although this week's taking a little bit of a hit with the illnesses and the birthday this weekend. It's going to be a few days where I'm not going to be able to, but next week we'll be flying straight through 8 a.m. every day as per. And of course, you can also find me at the Arsenal Way with a lot of some really great content creators over there. And of course, all the written stuff is over at football.london. So do check us out over there. Thanks, Harry.
Brilliant. Make sure you check it out. Make sure you subscribe to the Gooner Talk TV as well. Make sure you're subscribed here. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Canton and Symeou Show. Hopefully, maybe we might be talking about a win at Anfield. Who knows? Fingers crossed. Exactly. We'll catch you all very, very soon. Until next time. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.